Brilliant.
So that photo was taken at 5:30 in the morning. So yeah. First of all, thank you to the Toowong Rotary Club. We've had a blast in Mount Isa. We were able to inform people about you and what you do. I learned a lot about you guys along that as well. And yes, this opportunity I couldn't have done by myself. Yeah, so thank you.
So that's a lovely picture of Mount Isa at sunset. You never get sick of it out there. It really is beautiful. And so we arrived in Mount Isa on the 16th of August. Upon arriving at the airport, we were greeted with a thermometer, one of those thermometer guns at our face, which I'm pretty sure everybody has encountered. And when arriving at the hospital to collect our accommodation keys, we had to get a COVID swab test, which if anybody has had the displeasure of getting one, you know how uncomfortable that is. And when I got to Mount Isa, I didn't know a lot about the town itself, other than the fact that the population was roughly 33,000, that it was a mining town, and that the Indigenous population was 23%. So not a massive knowledge of Mount Isa going in, just that I've stopped there on a road trip a few times, and that's about it. I know it as a place where we get petrol and then we pass by. So that's what I knew from that.
Mount Isa Hospital.
Oh, sorry, that's me.
Yeah, it is you.
Sorry about that. So Mount Isa Hospital, where we were placed, has a total of 80 beds. It's bigger than what I expected. It's the referral hospital for the whole of Northwest region, with remote country and community hospitals at Doomadgee, Normanton, Mornington Island, Cloncurry, Julia Creek, and health centres at Dejara, Camooweal, Karumba, and Burketown. So everywhere from around there, they've either got flown in or the ambulance brought them in, or they were referred and they drove themselves. So there's a lot of travelling that happens amongst the Northwest region, because there's a lot of rural, remote communities that are very far away. And yes, so Mount Isa is the centre of the Northwest Health region. Now you.
During my time in Mount Isa, I was allocated a surgical placement. So these are my surgical gowns. I'm the one on the right. They were quite welcoming and lovely. So it was 6 weeks. I spent 4 weeks in the surgical ward. Sort of in the beginning, I mentioned that I'm interested in moving to Mount Isa for a placement, or doing rural in general. And I'm actually I've applied for the Northwest Health grad program to start next year. My clinical preference was emergency, so I made that known, and my last 2 weeks was able to be spent in emergency, but I'll get to that. The hospital was able to facilitate that, which is amazing. These girls were awesome. They encouraged me to come back. They said I was welcome anytime.
So my placement was 6 weeks on the medical ward, which was very different to surgical. And just by being on the ward 1 week, we get taught a lot at university about how big the health gap is in a rural or remote town. And you get told it a lot, and you have an idea, and you think, yeah, I know that, their health is much worse than an urban city. But then when you see it, it becomes very clear that, oh, they weren't joking. It is as prevalent as they say. Majority of the patients on my ward I've had a history of, or presenting with one, or often a combination of type 2 diabetes, kidney disease, heart disease, and or liver failure. And this wasn't just the elder population, but quite young population as well, which was very confronting to see. So while that works, this is just me with the medical ward staff on our night shift. Night shift was the only time I was able to take any photos of us on the ward, since it's, a lot more quiet on night shift. And this was actually my last shift where we had a little party on the nurse handover floor, which was very lovely. They made me feel very welcome, which was very nice. Oh, fantastic. Oh, no, it's me. There's a big primary focus of closing the gap in the Northwest Health at the moment. Sorry, that was you. I'm sorry, I stole Hannah's bit. I'm sorry.
Okay. Yeah, big on closing the gap at the moment. So there's a lot of, sorry, I'm really nervous. I'm not really good with this kind of thing. Yeah, just shaky. It's fine.
You don't get a mark as a team.
Oh, this is an assessment, right?
All right. So there's a big push on just increasing health literacy because unfortunately in rural towns you just don't get a lot of that. So that was interesting because you got to educate a lot. In terms of closing the gap, there's a Northwest Health and Health Service, alcohol, tobacco, and other drug services that they offer for free, mainly out of Mount Isa, but there's also in Doomadgee, Normanton, and Mornington Island. They have a lot of free health services through Allied Health as well. So there's podiatrists, physios, OTs.
Tracks all the way up here and find him, go in from the road and try to find where his house is.
Somebody's got a mute.
Oh, okay. So one of my roommates while in Mount Isa, she was a physio student. So she informed me that there's a completely student-run physio department, so to speak. So that's really cool. It's good hands-on experience for them. There's also a primary healthcare clinic in Mount Isa called Gidgee Healing. There's one in Mount Isa and Normanton. And it provides free healthcare advice, medication, education to Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people. And they provide, culturally appropriate care to people across the 640,000 kilometre radius, just to get it out there and make sure it's free and appropriate for everyone.
It's okay. There's unfortunately no mental health ward or a specific dedicated unit for mental health at Mount Isa Hospital, and there is such a big need for it, and that is the unfortunate part. People who present to ED with a mental illness have a one-on-one security special, which is not therapeutic or appropriate for a mental health patient, and they have to remain in the ED. And the mental health patients who do get admitted to the medical ward, the ones that I had experience with, they usually were admitted for a medical reason, not specific to their mental health. And the ward staff can only do so much with so little support. There are only a few mental health support staff in the hospital service, and the ones that I did have experience with, they weren't the best at listening to the nurse's input, which was unfortunate because the patient then had to stay in the medical ward without the support they needed. And Townsville is the closest hospital that has a dedicated mental health unit. So if you're in Mount Isa and you have a mental health problem, whether yourself or your family member, they have to leave the town to go all the way to Townsville. And that's only if the few mental health staff deem that that's appropriate for you. So there's a big need out there. Sorry, did I go too far? Oh, sorry.
Can we go back one?
Hold on, I've got it. Oh, you've gone?
Click away from that.
Click away? Oh, yes. Okay. Thank you. Oh. One more, sorry.
Yep.
I think that was on me. Sorry, I think I might have clicked.
You go.
Oh, I was nervous. Another one. Sorry. Yes, this one. Okay, yep, that's what I was confused. Okay. Sorry about that. There's one nursing home in Mount Isa, which is very surprising because they do have a large elder population and there is a big wait list to get in. Most patients have to be transferred elsewhere, either to Brisbane, Townsville, or maybe even a smaller town around Mount Isa. I was a part of a process where a husband and wife were both trying to get a placement in the same facility in Townsville, and it was quite a stressful process for them. And an unfortunate reality from, I guess, a healthcare perspective was that this nursing home doesn't have the best of reputations, which is very unfortunate. And the nursing home prefers to have patients not pass there. So often patients were admitted to the medical ward and that's where I was involved most in, which was PAL care. And it was lovely for me because I could give those patients that nice person-centered end-of-life care, but it was unfortunate that they had to pass in a hospital. And because of the big waiting list, many people have to stay at home and rely on their family to take care of them. And many Indigenous cultures also have large groups in houses, and yeah, unfortunately, a lot of palliative patients die in their home with the care of their family.
And dialysis. So there's a huge population in Mount Isa that actually suffer from renal failure and are on hemodialysis. So they have to come to the hospital, 3 to 4 times a week. And that's not great on life, but that's all right. There's actually a wait list. It's a huge unit, and there's actually a wait list to go on dialysis in Mount Isa. So therefore, it's a push to move to other towns or unfortunately just die. As morbid as that sounds, but that's sort of what they're faced with. Speaking to a lot of locals, there is a big expectation that, well, that's what I've got coming. That's fine. It's a way of life. I'm going to keep doing what I'm doing. So that was quite sad to see, to be honest, because I'll get to it in a minute, but there's a lot of alcohol and just not taking care of themselves. So yeah, there's a huge population that end up on dialysis, and yeah, moving is unfortunately the only option sometimes.
And so domestic violence was another thing that we were confronted with quite a bit. There's a very open culture in Mount Isa surrounding areas about domestic violence. Oh, sorry, yeah. And quite often that Hannah experienced in the ED was that the person who perpetrated the domestic violence will bring their partner in. So they're the ones who inflicted it, but then they were also the ones who brought them to medical attention. And it was quite confronting to see them speak so openly about it as if it's a normal way of life. And in Mount Isa, in the hospital, it's necessary to gain consent from patients and their families when offering services such as social work, Indigenous liaison officers, mental health, but quite often they decline or refuse such services when they're greatly needed. And so the cycle of abuse continues, which is a very unfortunate thing that we witnessed.
Alcohol abuse. This is the only town I've ever been in that the pubs closed, but the bottle shops are still open. So you can't go to Woolies on a Sunday or a Saturday past 6, but don't worry, you can go to the bottle shop. So that was a bit, it's a bit confronting whenever, you don't really know what else to do in a small town and this is what is provided to you. So the pokies are open till 4 as well. Due to COVID though, the pub actually shut at 10:30. But don't worry, you can go to the pokies and be there till 4 a.m. enjoying a drink. On the medical ward, the majority of the patients were, well, to be honest, everyone in the hospital. I was on the surgical ward. I put people on AWSs in ED because everyone consumes too much alcohol, and unfortunately, there's a lot of withdrawal in it as well, and that's quite life-threatening. We used to get, we would get a lot of people presenting through Royal Flying Doctors as well, going through withdrawal. And yeah, there's a lot of medication in that as well. And it's very it's very rough to see because like they come in, they detox, and then they go back to their communities, and the whole cycle happens again. It's, yeah. I know I'm enjoying a glass of wine tonight, but I mean, that's one this week. So, yeah, very different drinking culture there as well.
And so, like Hannah said, even though the bottle shop is open every day, the grocery stores are open only until 6 on Saturdays and close on Sunday. So when we arrived on a Sunday, we actually brought food and eskeys because we were told prior that nothing was going to be open. And we or other students had never seen such long queues to the McDonald's and KFC, which were the only two places that were really open, after hours or on those days off. And Mount Isa has no public transport either, and so we walked to the hospital. We were placed very close to the hospital, so it wasn't a very big deal for us, but if you had to buy groceries, you had to carry them. And so if you didn't have a car, you had to be very mindful of how much you can carry, foods that go off. So it really gave us insight about how, I guess, accessibility affects how they can eat and their diet and their lifestyle overall. And there are only a few taxis as well, which are pretty pricey.
So, unexpected challenges. So, during our time in Mount Isa, we both lost people in our families, which was quite upsetting. You never felt isolation like you did then. Can't go anywhere, can't do anything. It's pretty rough. On September 8th, my 4th week in Mount Isa, I lost my grandmother in the US. She died of a pulmonary embolism or a heart attack. They're really unsure. But unfortunately, I had to make the decision of staying or leaving, and due to COVID, it wasn't an option. So that was a bit of a tough thing. That's my grandma and me as a child. My partner, he came, and what else do? You go to the lake. So we went to the lake. The students and the staff in Mount Isa were incredible. Like they really helped. They, I had a couple of friends, and we would go for walks. We would go to the lake, go get ice cream and cry. What else? As I said, on my in my first 4 weeks, I was in the surgical ward. I took this is also sort of in our little reflections that we sent to you. But for those of you who haven't read it, the surgical ward were very welcoming, and they were happy for me to take patient loads, and I attended in-services on everything, including different scopes of practices that they have out in Mount Isa. Ward improvement, that was interesting because they're all still paper, whereas most of Queensland Health, my understanding, is digital. So just that seeing the cogs in that development, I suppose. Digital won't be happening anytime soon out there. Unfortunately, there's a lot more that is more, that takes a lot more precedent. There were a range of different conditions in the surgical ward. So there was a lot of diabetic amputations, a lot of domestic violence, and other just general assaults. We would frequently get young kids, like teenage boys mainly, and they would come in with busted hands and busted feet because they would go around breaking into cars. And yeah, they would have glass shards in them, and there was a lot of, actually, in the middle of nowhere, there's a lot of vehicle accidents as well. So I looked after this one guy. He was on a motorbike trip with him and his mates from Gladstone. They were going up past Uluru and those types of things. There was 5 of them. And yeah, someone was pulling out of the airport and smashed right into him. And he was in hospital for 2 weeks, I think. That was pretty vicious. There were surgical debridements. There was this guy who came in for, he lived in the river, essentially. Lived in the river, and so there was a lot of antibacterial issues. Anyway, he would discharge, go get drunk and smoke, and then come back with maggots in his feet. It's a long, long cycle. And yeah, there was still, so there was overflow from the medical ward sometimes as well. So you'd have nursing home placements, domestic violence is a big one. I think I put it twice. Ectopic pregnancies. I was able to witness a great sense of community and everything. Like the girls in the photo, like they worked really well as a team, even though like it's sort of just them. What else did I do? Yeah. And then in my final 2 weeks, I was in the emergency department, so that was pretty sweet. It's what I wanted to do, and that helped really confirm that. Unfortunately, due to the death, I was probably not my best self. So I didn't tell anyone for a couple of days, and then I realized, well, to get the most out of this, I think I need to ask for help. So I spoke with my buddy, and we were able to set goals and those types of things, which helped, I think, develop me as well while I was there to get the most out of it. What else? Thanks. I'll skip up a little bit. In ED, I saw a range of chronic health issues. So unfortunately, the public health system in ED, you'd see a lot of primary healthcare problems. So they use, a lot of locals use it as a bit of a GP clinic, but that's all right. I saw a lot of mental illness, assaults, elderly falls, rheumatic heart disease, because that's unfortunately still a thing in rural areas. And I'd never experienced that in any of my time working in Brisbane hospitals or other. Yeah, I felt like I learned a lot and got to experience a lot in that short period. I'm very, very thankful that they could have fit me in, because that really put a cherry on top of my last placement, and I really appreciate it. I told everyone.
That's nice. So during my time on the medical ward, our running joke was that the ward was a nursing home because of how many long stay patients we had. At one point, only 3/4 of our patient on the ward, at one point, the 3/4 of the patients were long stay and were awaiting placement, and the other quarter were the ones receiving active treatment, which was okay because you develop a very good rapport and a good therapeutic relationship amongst the patients. And you get very lovely stories out of them that you would never get on day 1 or just day 2. On day 28, you'll get it out of them. Many of the patients who are awaiting placements, they had nowhere to go with the limited health services and the one nursing home we talked about earlier. There were patients that had been on the ward. I think the longest I saw was over 3 months. Some patients were being transferred to another city, but they were being transferred by the Royal Flying Doctors, and the Royal Flying Doctors works, I guess, based on needs. So because they're waiting placement, they're sent at the bottom of the list. So some people are waiting a few weeks to get transferred. So while on that ward, luckily I was able to learn a lot about the external factors that affected the health delivery of the Northwest Service and why they were in so much financial debt. A lot of the Northwest, they provide travel money for patients to come and go. And I guess I got to see a lot of the behind the scenes when I had that free time, which was very interesting. And unfortunately, because of the large amount of long stay patients, there weren't that many IV medications, ECG scans, all that frequent observations. But fortunately, I was allowed to choose my patients. My facilitator was very proactive in me kind of being allowed to choose, I guess, the most interesting patients, which is kind of a little bit cruel to say, but the ones who were receiving the most treatment at the time, I was able to take care of, which was good for my practice. My facilitator also organized a in-service pretty much every day. And so I got very valuable insight from specialists of elderly folk, for delirium, for mental health, hospital, I guess, technology, diabetes. It was very, very interesting. And I feel like I gained a lot of knowledge from that. In a very sad coincidence, my bātang my grandmother in Japan also passed away on September 8th. So although educationally and professionally this placement was very interesting, but personally it was a very big struggle because, like Hannah said, when you're out in a rural town, you already feel isolated because we moved from Brisbane, but then, oh, I went back, but that's okay. You feel another level of isolation because you aren't able to immediately go to your family. And so I guess in a way we were able to experience what the locals of Mount Isa experience when they have a health issue or when they need to leave town to go to a city. The drive is very, very long and the flights are incredibly expensive. You'd be shocked about how expensive they are. And many of the nurses and patients who I spoke to, they actually really love living in Mount Isa. They love living in the country, they love the community, they love the scenery, but what they don't love is the inaccessibility and how expensive it is to move from town to town, which makes things very difficult, especially in a healthcare context. And so luckily for me, even though it was a very difficult time, the medical ward nurses were very good to work with. They were excellent. They were very kind and funny but professional, and they all do their jobs very well. The nurses made me feel like I was a very valid member of the team. They listened to my input, not only the nurses, but the doctors and allied health professionals. And I feel like I got a real glimpse of what it would be like to be a graduate registered nurse and not just a, I don't know, prop in the background that just took orders. The environment of the hospital in general was very welcoming, and all the nurses were more than happy to show me new skills, or they would come approach me about certain things that they've never done before and showed me while they learnt as well. It was a very wonderful teaching hospital. All the disciplines were very passionate about bettering the overall health in Mount Isa, as were the students. A lot of dietetics and pharmacy students we talked about. We often discussed the very big gap that really needs to be kind of slowly closed from rural and urban health. And so it was a very good experience overall. And so, sorry about all the doom and gloom, but on slightly happier and cuter note, we had, so on our ward, we were very lucky to have a friendly therapy animal. We had a puppy, DJ, but I think the Joey is much cuter. So a baby Joey Wallaby called Fitzpatrick, a nurse on our ward. I guess this only happens in the country. So he found this Joey without its mother. He'd been hit by a car, and kangaroos are considered pests out there. So the vet said, you know, they can't really do anything. And they were told to take the Joey to the kangaroo lady of Mount Isa. And when they mentioned the name, the nurse recognized it because she was actually a patient on our ward at the time. And so he kind of got permission to bring the Joey in as kind of as a therapy for this patient. And yeah, it was very wonderful. So we had a little Joey that visited us, I think every second day from, I think, my week 4 onwards. And so it not only helped calm this patient when she was in distress, but it also brought a lot of joy to a lot of the other patients. Some patients would, you know, get out and about to come see the Joey, to give it a little pet. And I think all the staff, all of our hearts were melted quite a bit seeing him. It was very, very cute. I mean, we all thought this was a kangaroo, but this is actually a Joey. And the way you can tell is the amount of leather on their nose. I'm not explaining it very well. The kangaroo lady definitely did, but it's the size of the leathery part on the nose is how you tell, but don't quote me.
The outback was a beautiful place. We didn't get to see everything, but we gave it a red hot crack. So whenever we weren't doing uni work or sleeping post night shift, actually this photo here, I got off night shift at 7:30 and took a 20-minute power nap and went to Mary Kathleen for the day, which is like a 30-minute car trip there. Not too bad, but whenever you're crammed in the back seat. And then it was a 7-kilometer round walk because we went in a car, not a 4-wheel drive, which definitely recommend if you're going there, please take a 4-wheel drive. I took what I could get considering it was free, but and then yeah, we went to the lake a lot.
All right, the next pictures of this.
And this is Mary
Really
Kathleen.
beautiful.
So this picture does not do it justice. I took so many pictures and it's incredible. So it's an old uranium mine that closed in 1982. It's sort of like, it was sort of like Mount Isa in a way. It was a town, but they sold it and they just picked up all the buildings and they took them to different places. You know, that you could do that. Unfortunately, we couldn't get to the old township part, but apparently it's just a lot of foundational blocks. A lot of people do camping there, which would be pretty interesting. It's a popular tourist site. The water is this, after 3.5 Ks or whatever it was after getting lost, the water looked so good to jump in. But it was,
Don't.
don't do it. Apparently radioactive, people do it. Later on to be a science experiments, I think, but
Tempting, but don't do it.
yeah, pretty much. It was pretty quiet when we visited. There was more a lot of locals with their 4-wheel drives that were there. But yeah, you can walk up along like those ridges. This was taken sort of at the bottom in the level, but there's a big cliff and yeah, really, really awesome, really beautiful. Glad we went on 20 minutes late.
And so Lake Mundara, the photo from before of us as a group, it's a popular spot to visit amongst locals and amongst students. This is actually an artificial lake, and it's just outside of the Mount Isa town and offers really beautiful picnic and obviously sunset spots. And you can have a swim, but there are freshwater crocodiles, which the locals are divided on. You'll hear people say, oh, they're friendly, they're fine, just don't go near them. And then there's, I grew up in Far North Queensland, I don't want to be going near any crocs. No, thank you. Okay, can I do that right? Oops. Oh, okay, yes. So this is the pictures of the granites. So the granites is an old abandoned granite mine. A lot of abandoned mines in this area, there's a common theme, and it's just outside of Mount Isa, and it's a spectacular spot that again offers really beautiful sunset photos and just sunset scenery viewing. And
didn't show up very well in that picture.
Yeah, these photos don't do it justice. No. So I guess we are now a tourism ad for Mount Isa.
Yeah.
And the granites at night. So I guess anywhere in outback Australia, it's a fantastic spot to stargaze. And again, pictures don't do it justice. The lack of light pollution was very nice out in Mount Isa in that area. We got to see a lot of beautiful stars. And I think those students, you can see the Milky Way as well out there, which is beautiful. Oh yes, I'm so sorry, I took your part.
Back on Lake Mundara though, on a side note, duck lice is a big thing. So this is Telstra Hill. This is one of the lookouts that's just outside of town. If you go at sunrise, it's really beautiful. You can see the sunrise from this big range. It's really lovely. It's really, really steep. Really, really steep. It doesn't look it. And the road is awful, few twisted ankles, but yes.
So on a property just outside of town, there was a camel farm, as you can see on the right, and going for an afternoon walk to feed the camels. They were very friendly. It was a popular activity amongst all of our students. Mount Isa is a quiet town, but there definitely isn't a shortage of things to see, especially when it comes to beautiful scenery. So that's Hannah, I guess as it says, Hannah at the sunset at the granites. So we have a lot of beautiful scenery pictures, and this is just a few pictures where we're actually in them.
As I said before, if you're thinking about visiting Mount Isa, definitely take the scenic route, hire a 4-wheel drive. Also, that was quite expensive. We looked into it, it was $190 per day with a 3-day minimum, and that was a basic bush basher. It wasn't great. There are heaps of places to go by car, like the lake and stuff, but definitely if you're going to go that far, you may as well do it properly. Yeah, just a couple of sites with the red dirt.
Oh, just a second. You like that? There we go. So Mount Isa gave both of us very unique healthcare experiences, as well as showed us the beauty of rural Australia. We highly recommend going to Mount Isa for placement to any healthcare student that is interested in rural or remote health.
This was my last placement, hopefully, working for free for a long time until I go back to do midwifery. Something you might not know about me is I actually started my nursing degree 8 years ago. Moved around a little bit, had to start all over. Here I am. So hopefully this is it. But through this time, I'm actually happy it kind of worked out like this because I've got to experience a lot and go to a lot of different places. So I'm pretty happy, and I hope that this was a good way to finish.
Yes, this was also my last placement. I feel very lucky to have the opportunities that I've been given, and I've gained a lot of knowledge in different areas, and I can take this with me to my grad year, so I guess we can't thank you enough for that. I plan on returning to study also, but I'm very indecisive. Nursing is very broad, so I'll choose that later on. And thank you.
Yeah, thank you.